So, speed of light practice problems. When you do these problems, we have our equation here. We have speed of light equals wavelength times frequency. And what you need to know about them is the units that we just went over. So oftentimes they're going to give you the wavelength in nanometers, but we really need it in meters. So here's how to convert that. So we have a wavelength of 700 nanometers. In order to convert it to meters, the easiest thing to do is just keep the 700 as is, times 10 to the negative 9th meter. Okay, so you will need to memorize this. We know the speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. Okay, and they give us the wavelength here. So we just need to calculate the frequency. So C equals wavelength times frequency. The speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8th power meters per second. Wavelength is 700 times 10 to the negative 9th power meters. And frequency is what we're looking for. So in order to get frequency by itself, we're going to have to divide by 700 times 10 to the negative 9th meter on both sides. Meters will cancel out. So we get 4 point, and I'm just going to leave it at 4 because they gave me 1 sig fig. I need my answer with 1 sig fig. So 4 times 10 to the 14th power, and our units are per second. Let's do number 2. So we're calculating frequency again. So speed of light is wavelength times frequency. I know the speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. The wavelength they give me is 400. I'm going to times that to the negative 9th meters. And I'm looking for frequency. So again, I'm going to divide on both sides. So this time I get 7.5, so I'm going to round that to 8 because I can only have 1 sig fig again. And remember the units are per second. In your video, remember I talked to you about page 120 in your textbook and how that was going to give you a scale here. Length is at the top, frequency is at the bottom, and you have all your different electromagnetic waves here. Sometimes in these problems they're going to give you the frequency and they're going to tell you what kind of light it is, so you need to look up exactly the wavelength or the frequency in order to answer your questions. And some of these questions are going to be asking you for the speed of light, and we know on average it's 3 times 10 to the 8th power, but we want to specifically look up the kind of light they give you. And that's what we're going to do in the next question. The next question, our equation, speed of light is wavelength times frequency. Let's do number 3. A red light has a wavelength of 728 nanometers. What is the frequency of the light? So again, we know the speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8th power meters per second. We have the wavelength of 728, and remember to change that to meters. And they're asking us for frequency. So exact same kind of problem. We're going to divide 728 times 10 to the negative 9th. Let's do our math here. This time we have 3 sig figs, so I'm going to do 3 sig figs. So 4.12 times 10 to the 14th power. And that is per second. So this question's a little different than we've been doing. They're asking for the speed. But this time they're wanting us to use this chart. So page 120 I told you about in your textbook. So the way this works is wavelength is at the top, frequency is at the bottom, and then they're going to tell you what kind of wave it is. In this case, they tell you it's a red wave. So visible light goes from red to violet, and so the leftmost part of the visible light spectrum is where you're looking. So they give us the wavelength. We're going to use this table to get the frequency. So the frequency should be, do you see that's about halfway between the 14 and 16? So I would say 10 to the 15th power for red light. So the wavelength they gave us in the previous problem, 728 nanometers. And the frequency we just got from that chart, 10 to the 15th per second. So for speed of light, we have speed of light as wavelength times frequency. Make sure we plug in our wavelength as meters. And our frequency would be times 10 to the 15th power. Notice when I'm putting in the 10 to the 15th power, I'm putting a 1 and then my times 10 button and then 15, so I don't mess anything up here. So they don't give me my answer in scientific notation. That's okay, I can do it myself. So 7.28 times 10 power, and that's meters per second. So specifically for red light, this is going to be the speed.